On a crisp autumn afternoon in Berlin, 14-year-old Georgine Krueger vanished without a trace, leaving behind a family shattered by uncertainty. The golden hues of the falling leaves and the crisp air held no warning of the tragedy about to unfold. Georgine was a bright, ambitious girl with a deep passion for acting. From a young age, she had been fascinated by the world of film and television, often practicing monologues in front of the mirror and dreaming of seeing her name in the credits. She had recently moved to Berlin with her mother and younger sister, a change that filled her with excitement and nervous anticipation. The city offered her new opportunities, and she had just secured a small but significant role in a TV show, her first step toward what she hoped would be a successful acting career. She often spoke about it with enthusiasm, envisioning a future where she could perform on grand stages or appear in blockbuster films. However, adjusting to her new school was far from easy. The students were not as welcoming as she had hoped. Some admired her ambition, but others viewed her with envy. She was a fresh face in a tightly knit environment, and whispers followed her in the hallways. Her passion for acting, once a source of joy, became a target for ridicule. The subtle exclusion, the side glances, and the occasional cruel remarks made her school days difficult. Still, Georgine remained optimistic. She confided in her mother and sister, who reassured her that things would improve. She held on to the belief that her talent and determination would lead her to something greater, that the struggles of the present would one day be overshadowed by her success. But then, on that fateful autumn afternoon, her dreams and her future were suddenly inexplicably cut short. On September 25, 2006, Georgine left school as usual, her heart brimming with anticipation. She was expecting an important call from the TV studio that had cast her in a small role, an opportunity she had been eagerly looking forward to. The day had been routine, but her mind was elsewhere, filled with excitement and dreams of her budding career. She chatted briefly with a few classmates before heading to the bus stop, unaware that this would be the last time anyone at school would see her. She boarded the bus that took her home, just like any other day. The streets of Berlin were bustling with the usual afternoon crowd, students returning home, workers finishing their shifts, and the city moving at its usual hurried pace. Witnesses later confirmed that Georgine had been on the bus, sitting quietly, lost in thought, possibly rehearsing lines or imagining her future in front of the camera. As the bus neared her stop, she stood up, adjusted the strap of her school bag, and stepped off onto the pavement near her apartment building. And then she vanished. Hours turned into an agonizing evening as her mother and sister waited for her to return. At first, they assumed there had been a delay. Perhaps she had stopped to visit a friend or gotten caught up somewhere. But as the night stretched on without any word from Georgine, worry turned into dread. Her phone went unanswered, her school bag and belongings were nowhere to be found, and there were no signs of her anywhere. The early days of the investigation were marked by frustrating delays and misjudgments. The police, convinced that Georgine had run away, did not immediately treat her disappearance as a potential crime. Critical hours were lost, and vital evidence that could have provided clues about her whereabouts was never properly gathered. The area where she was last seen was not sealed off for forensic examination, and no immediate search teams were dispatched. By the time authorities began taking the case seriously, any potential leads had already started to fade. Georgine's family, especially her mother, pushed relentlessly for action. They distributed missing person posters throughout the city, contacted media outlets, and pleaded with authorities to escalate the case. Investigators questioned classmates, teachers, and neighbors, but no one had seen anything unusual. Surveillance footage from the area was reviewed, yet nothing suspicious was captured. It was as if Georgine had vanished into thin air. The absence of physical evidence, no belongings left behind, no signs of a struggle, only deepened the mystery. Months passed, and with each passing day, the case lost momentum. Police followed several potential leads, but each ended in disappointment. Some claimed to have seen Georgine in different parts of Berlin, but none of the sightings could be verified. Anonymous tips trickled in, offering cryptic suggestions or misleading information, further complicating the investigation. A few individuals were briefly questioned, including known offenders in the area, but no connections to Georgine's case could be established. One of the most significant breakthroughs, or what seemed to be one, came a year later, when an anonymous tip indicated that Georgine's body had been dumped in a lake on the outskirts of Berlin. Authorities launched an extensive search operation, deploying divers and sonar equipment to scan the lakebed. Days of meticulous searching yielded nothing. It was a devastating blow to the family, who had clung to the hope of at least finding her remains. The tip, like many others before it, led to another dead end. As time went on, the police began to deprioritize the case. With no fresh evidence and no suspects, it slowly faded from active investigation. The cold reality of a cold case set in. Georgine's name became just another unsolved mystery in police archives. Her mother and sister, however, never gave up. They continued to raise awareness, hoping that someday someone would come forward with the truth. But for more than a decade, all they had were questions with no answers, trapped in the unbearable limbo of not knowing what had happened to their beloved Georgine. The case remained stagnant for over a decade, with Georgine's family left in agonizing uncertainty. Then, in what seemed like an unexpected turn of fate, a series of complaints about a local man, Ali K., reignited interest in her disappearance. Neighbors had long whispered about his unsettling presence in the community. He was known to linger near schools and parks, striking up conversations with young girls, often offering them gifts or invitations to his home under harmless pretenses. Over the years, a few parents had reported his suspicious behavior, but nothing substantial had ever been done to stop him. It wasn't until multiple residents came forward with disturbing accounts of his actions that police finally took a closer look. One complaint detailed how he had persistently tried to befriend an underage girl, inviting her inside his apartment with promises of money and treats. Another neighbor recalled seeing young girls enter his home, but never feeling quite right about what went on behind closed doors. Though there had never been solid evidence against him, the sheer number of concerns raised was enough to warrant renewed scrutiny. Investigators began to dig into Ali K.'s past and discovered a troubling history. He had been involved in previous cases of sexual misconduct, though none had resulted in severe legal consequences. His name had surfaced in reports before, but without clear proof, he had managed to avoid any serious charges. Now, with fresh complaints mounting against him, police decided to take a bold approach. They would put him under surveillance. Determined to finally uncover the truth, authorities devised an undercover operation. Officers posing as acquaintances slowly integrated themselves into Ali's life, earning his trust over several months. They carefully observed his behavior, noting his patterns and the people he interacted with. The goal was to draw him out, to gain his confidence until he let his guard down. It was a slow, methodical process, requiring patience and precision. As time passed, Ali K. grew comfortable with the undercover officers. He began talking more openly, sometimes boasting about things that hinted at a darker past. The investigators listened closely, waiting for the moment when he might reveal something incriminating. It wasn't long before their patience paid off. One evening, in what seemed like an unguarded moment, Ali made a chilling confession. He spoke of Georgine Krueger, describing details about her disappearance that only someone involved would know. The revelation was both shocking and horrifying. The police now had a confession, but they needed more. They continued pressing him over time, gathering additional information, ensuring that when the time came, the evidence would be undeniable. The mystery that had haunted Georgine's family for 14 years was finally beginning to unravel. The police knew they had to be meticulous. Ali K. was cautious, a man who had evaded justice for years. and any direct confrontation could make him retreat further into secrecy. Instead of immediate interrogation, authorities devised a long-term undercover operation to gain his trust and extract the truth naturally. A team of undercover officers was carefully selected, each trained in psychological manipulation and covert tactics. They integrated themselves into Ali K's world, appearing as friendly acquaintances rather than investigators. Some posed as casual neighbors, others as acquaintances from the local community, striking up conversations with him in a way that felt organic. The goal was to make him feel comfortable, lower his defenses, and eventually reveal what he had been hiding for so long. At first, Ali was reserved, but he craved companionship and validation. The undercover officers played into his need for attention, listening to his ramblings, nodding along to his stories, and occasionally steering conversations toward his past. They asked seemingly innocent questions about his life, his habits, and his thoughts on the people around him. They carefully observed his reactions, noting the moments when he grew nervous or changed the subject. Over the course of several months, Ali began to let his guard down. The officers manipulated his sense of security, making him believe he was among like-minded individuals who wouldn't judge him. It was during one of these seemingly casual conversations that he slipped up. At first, he hinted at knowing more about Georgine Krueger's disappearance than anyone else. It was vague, almost like he was testing the waters, but the officers pressed him subtly, acting curious rather than accusatory. As the trust deepened, so did his revelations. One evening, feeling emboldened by the confidence he had built with his new friends, Ali made a chilling confession. He described in disturbing detail how he had lured Georgine into his home the moment he decided she wouldn't leave alive, and how he had silenced her forever. He spoke of the fear in her eyes, the struggle, and how he had disposed of her body in a calculated attempt to erase all traces of his crime. The officers remained composed, concealing their horror as they carefully steered the conversation to gather even more details. Every word he spoke was being secretly recorded, ensuring there would be no room for him to deny his actions later. It was the evidence they had been waiting for, the undeniable proof that Ali K had been responsible for Georgine's disappearance and murder. With this confession in hand, the authorities moved swiftly. The years of uncertainty were about to end, and justice for Georgine Krueger was finally within reach. Ali K's admission was as horrifying as it was heartbreaking. On that fateful afternoon, he had spotted Georgine as she stepped off the bus, alone and unaware of the danger lurking nearby. He had seen her before, observed her routine, and on that day, he decided to act. Using a calculated mix of deception and coercion, he managed to lure her into his apartment. Whether it was a false promise of safety, a request for help, or something else entirely, no one would ever know for certain. But once she was inside, her fate was sealed. Georgine's last moments were filled with terror. The friendly neighbor facade quickly faded, revealing the predator beneath. She struggled, realizing too late that she had walked into a trap. But Ali was stronger, crueler, and determined to ensure she would never leave. He strangled her, watching as the life drained from her young body. When it was over, he stood in the eerie silence of his apartment, knowing he had crossed a line from which there was no return. Panic set in as he stared at what he had done. For days, Georgine's lifeless body remained hidden in his basement, concealed from the world. He knew the police were looking for her, that her family was searching desperately, but he remained calm, waiting for the right moment to dispose of the evidence. When the time came, he transported her remains to a landfill, dumping them among the endless piles of waste, believing that nature and time would do the rest. What he hadn't accounted for was the landfill's routine incineration process. By the time investigators even considered searching for Georgine's remains, they were long gone, reduced to ashes, with no chance of recovery. In his mind, Ali had erased nearly all traces of her existence, but what he failed to destroy was the truth. His own words, recorded in secret, would become the key to his downfall. Despite later denying everything in court, his own chilling confession had sealed his fate. After 14 years of uncertainty, Georgine's family finally knew the truth. Though it was a devastating revelation, it brought them the justice they had fought for, ending the nightmare that had haunted them for so long. When Ali K. was finally arrested and brought to trial, his demeanor changed drastically. The man who had once spoken so freely about his crimes in private now presented himself as a victim of manipulation. He sat in the courtroom, composed yet defiant, insisting that he had been coerced into making false statements. His defense team argued that his recorded confession was nothing more than a twisted fabrication, a result of psychological pressure from the undercover officers who had infiltrated his life. Ali claimed that he had merely been entertaining dark fantasies, indulging in disturbing but ultimately harmless storytelling. He insisted that his words had been taken out of context, that he had exaggerated his involvement for attention, and that he had never harmed Georgine Krueger. His lawyers painted him as an eccentric loner who had been unfairly targeted, arguing that the confession alone was not enough to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. When the prosecution played the hidden recording in court, the atmosphere shifted. The once unshakable confidence Ali had displayed in private now worked against him. His voice, previously filled with disturbing pride, now echoed through the silent courtroom. The jurors listened in stunned horror as he provided chilling details of Georgine's final moments: the abduction, the way she had fought back, the cold manner in which he had strangled her, and his calculated disposal of her body. His words were precise, too detailed to be mere fantasy. He spoke of how he had kept her body in his basement for days, waiting for the right time to get rid of it. He described transporting her remains to a landfill, knowing that incineration would erase all physical evidence. His admission was clear, leaving no room for doubt. The prosecution used this confession as the foundation of their airtight case. They backed it up with testimonies from neighbors who had long harbored suspicions about Ali K's unsettling behavior. Several women came forward, revealing that he had tried to lure them into his home when they were teenagers. Some spoke of his inappropriate comments. Others recalled his persistence in trying to befriend young girls, despite their discomfort. While no physical remains of Georgine had ever been recovered, forensic experts contributed to the case by analyzing Ali's past actions. Investigators detailed how his apartment had been meticulously cleaned shortly after Georgine's disappearance, raising questions about what he had been trying to erase. Witnesses recalled a foul odor emanating from his basement in the days following the crime, something he had dismissed as rotting food. The defense tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case, arguing that there was no direct physical evidence linking Ali K to Georgine's murder. But it was a losing battle. The weight of his own words, the testimony of those who had long suspected him, and the undeniable pattern of his predatory behavior were too much to ignore. As the trial neared its conclusion, the once confident Ali K had grown increasingly agitated. He refused to make eye contact with the jurors. His hands trembled as he fidgeted in his seat, and his once forceful denials became more desperate. He had spent years believing he had escaped justice, but now reality was closing in on him. When the verdict was read, there was no doubt left. Ali K was found guilty. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions. For Georgine's family, it was a long-awaited moment of justice, but it was also a painful confirmation of what they had feared for years. The man who had stolen their daughter's life would finally pay for his crimes, but no sentence could ever undo the horror he had inflicted. The verdict was inevitable. Ali K was found guilty of murder, and for the first time in 14 years, Georgine's family saw justice delivered. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, ensuring he would never harm another innocent life again. Yet no punishment could undo the pain he had caused, nor could it bring Georgine back. For years, Georgine's family had lived in a tormenting limbo. Caught between hope and despair, they had clung to the possibility that she might still be alive, that she had somehow escaped and would one day return home. Now, with the truth laid before them, that hope was shattered, replaced by the unbearable weight of reality. The knowledge of what had happened to Georgine was devastating, but at least the agonizing uncertainty had ended. They no longer had to wonder, to search in vain, to hold on to false promises of sightings or anonymous tips that led nowhere. The nightmare had finally reached its conclusion. Though her life was stolen far too soon, Georgine's story would not be forgotten. Her name would live on as a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist in the most unsuspecting places, of the evil that can lurk behind an ordinary neighbor's door. But more than that, she would be remembered as the bright, talented girl who had once dreamed of stardom, whose light was cruelly extinguished, but whose spirit remained forever in the hearts of those who loved her. If you like this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant. This is Crime Tales Across Times, signing off.